During our 30-year marriage, my wife always wanted me to try loving another woman. She said, "It's precisely because I love you that I want you to care for another woman, but I know her love for you far exceeds mine." This woman was my mother, who carried me for 10 months and raised me. She had been a widow for 20 years since my father's accident, and due to my busy work schedule, I rarely had time to accompany her. That evening, I called my mother and invited her to dinner, hoping to spend some quality time together. She excitedly said, "Of course, I'd love to." On the weekend, I drove to pick her up. Upon arriving at her house, I noticed she seemed nervous about our date. She had dressed herself exquisitely, wearing the dress she had worn on her last wedding anniversary with my father. She was beaming with joy and radiance, looking like an angel. At the restaurant, which was not very luxurious but very comfortable, she appeared unexpectedly excited. She held my arm as we walked to our seats. I began reading the menu, and as my mother's vision was poor, I looked up to see her smiling at me from across the table, lost in memories of her childhood. I said, "When I was a child, you always chose the dishes. Today, it's my turn to serve you." We had a delightful conversation, reminiscing about old times to the point of missing our movie. Later, I took my mother home, and she said, "I had a wonderful day today, and I will dine with you again. But next time, I will invite you." I agreed. When I got home, my wife eagerly asked about it, and I replied that I never expected it to be so special. It was just a simple dinner, but I hadn't seen my mother so happy in many years. As time passed, my mother left us suddenly due to a heart attack with a smile on her face. It happened so abruptly that I couldn't do anything. After some time, I received a letter from the restaurant we had visited. It read, "Son, I've already paid. I said next time it would be my treat, but I can't make it this time. I've reserved 2 places, one for you and the other for your wife. You won't understand the meaning of that night to me. I love you, son. Take good care of your wife." Sometimes I really wonder if there is true love between my parents. They are always busy with work, seemingly just to provide me with a better living environment, rather than being affectionate like what I've read in books or seen on TV. On Valentine's Day, even a simple "I love you" seems hard to say, let alone something like dating. One day, my mother was in the kitchen washing vegetables, preparing to stew a pot of chicken soup. I sat quietly in a corner of the kitchen, watching her busy figure, and asked softly, "Mom, is there love between you and Dad?" My mother stopped what she was doing and looked up in surprise. She was silent for a moment, then bowed her head and continued to wash the vegetables. I felt like I might have asked a question I shouldn't have, which made me feel a bit guilty. After a while, my mother said softly, "Dear, look at these vegetables and meat. Sometimes they are so ordinary, but when I stew them together, they become a soup that nourishes us. If life is like this pot of soup, then love is in every little detail. You might not see it all the time, but it is truly there. Love is internal, quietly blossoming in the little things of everyday life." In my eyes, my parents always seemed to lack love for each other. Their lives were often shrouded in minor quarrels, like 2 perpetual adversaries. However, one day, a small incident changed my perspective. That morning, my father overslept due to working late the previous night, waking up just in time for a rush to work. He hurriedly prepared, not even having time for breakfast, and dashed out the door. Just then, my mother stopped him and handed him an umbrella. My father, in his haste, asked irritably why she would give him an umbrella on a sunny day, seemingly thinking her act was senseless. But my mother simply said quietly, "Take it. Don't be late." Though puzzled, my father took the umbrella and left in a hurry. At the end of the workday, a sudden downpour made my father realize my mother's thoughtfulness. Grateful, he bought a box of her favorite strawberries on his way home. Upon entering the house, he immediately embraced my mother, tenderly apologizing, and curiously asked how she knew it would rain. My mother replied with a smile, "Dear, I check the weather forecast every night. I didn't want to disturb you in your hurry this morning, so I could only remind you in this way. This story teaches you that true love between spouses is not always manifested in romantic gestures or sweet words. In a lively American small town, there lived a young boy named Jack. Jack was a child brimming with energy and curiosity. On a sunny afternoon after returning home from school, Jack joyfully practiced his basketball skills in the living room. The ball bounced in his hands, full of vitality, like lively notes of music. However, during this moment of joy, an accident happened. Jack accidentally knocked over an ancient vase in the house, a precious item that had been passed down through generations in his family. The sound of the vase shattering seemed to also shatter Jack's heart. In a rush, he tried to hide his mistake, clumsily gluing the pieces of the vase back together and cautiously putting it back in its place. That evening, Jack's mother noticed something unusual about the vase, but she did not react with anger. Instead, she chose a more loving way to address the issue. She took out a box of exquisite chocolates and handed one to Jack, softly saying, "This is to reward your imagination, Jack. Your story might be made up, but it's filled with creativity." Then, she gave him a second chocolate. "This one is for your effort. The repair isn't perfect, but you tried." Finally, she picked up a third chocolate, her eyes gentle. "This is because I didn't consider your need for space. I should find a safer place to keep our family heirloom." Jack's eyes welled up with tears. From his mother's actions, he learned the importance of honesty and responsibility. He understood that facing mistakes bravely and learning from them is what truly matters. From that day on, Jack became more honest and mature, knowing that even in times of error, love and understanding are always there to support him. Many of the stories in my video are from this set of storybooks, and because each story in this book set is concise and full of philosophical insight, the content is very informative inside, contains philosophy, motivation, life, and so on. This is a book you can't miss for learning English. At a dazzling banquet, he met her for the first time. She was radiant, becoming the focus of many suitors, while he remained unnoticed. As the banquet concluded, he mustered the courage to invite her for coffee, a request that took her by surprise, but she accepted out of politeness. They chose a quiet and elegant cafe, where, upon sitting down, he was so nervous he could hardly speak, and she felt a bit constrained. Amid the awkward atmosphere, he suddenly asked the waiter for some salt, explaining, "I grew up by the sea, where the water is salty. Whenever I drink coffee, adding a bit of salt reminds me of my childhood and hometown. The taste brings back memories of my parents." She was deeply moved by this sentiment, sensing a man nostalgic for his home must deeply love and care for his family, a trustworthy man. Likewise, she shared stories of her distant hometown, her childhood and family, thus beginning the curtain rise on their love story. Over time, their relationship deepened. His tolerance, kindness, enthusiasm, and attentiveness captivated her. She often thought that without that salty cup of coffee, she might have missed out on him. Their days together were filled with happiness and warmth, and whenever she prepared coffee for him, she would always add some salt, knowing it was his preference. 40 years later, upon his passing, a letter he left revealed a long-hidden secret. "My dear, please forgive me," it began. "There's been a lie I've kept from you all your life. Remember our first date? I was so nervous. I meant to ask for sugar but said salt instead. It was too difficult to correct myself, so I just went with it. I never imagined we would hit it off so well. Many times I wanted to tell you the truth but feared everything would fall apart. My dear, I don't actually like salty coffee, but it was important to you, so I've learned to accept it. Being with you has been the greatest happiness of my life. If I could live again, I would gladly drink salty coffee for the rest of my life, willing to endure it just to be with you." His confession was not just an apology for the small lie, but a testament to their love. He was willing to accept anything for her, even a lifetime of salty coffee. This letter deeply touched her, making her cherish their time together even more. In a typical American family, a little story unfolded. The protagonist of the story was a young boy named Ike. One day after school, as Ike was playing in the living room, he accidentally knocked over a family heirloom, an ancient vase placed on a shelf, with a basketball. The pieces scattered all over the floor, filling Ike with panic. In an attempt to cover up the mess, he hurriedly glued the pieces back together, trying his best to restore it to its original state before carefully putting the vase back in its place. However, Ike's attentive mother soon noticed something was off about the vase. Faced with the possibility of punishment, Ike came up with a plan. He concocted a story. A stray cat jumped in through the window, ran amok in the living room, and ultimately caused the vase to be accidentally broken. Despite the imaginative explanation, his mother knew it was just a lie Ike had told. That evening, Ike was called into the study. His mother didn't question him directly, but instead pulled out a box of chocolates from a drawer, handed him a piece, and said gently, "Peace is for your wonderful imagination, for creating a cat that can open windows. Someday, you could become a great detective novelist." Then, she gave him a second piece of chocolate, praising, "This one is for your excellent repair skills. Although it was just with glue, you almost made the cracks disappear. Remember, repairing an artwork requires stronger glue and more professional skills. Tomorrow, we will give the vase to artists to show us how to restore an artwork to its original form." In this warm conversation, she took out a third piece of chocolate, with a tone full of deep apology, saying, "Last piece represents my apology. I shouldn't have placed the vase in such a vulnerable spot, especially knowing I have a child at home who loves sports. I hope you weren't hurt or scared, my dear." This series of warmth and understanding completely melted Ike's rebellious heart. From that day on, Ike never lied again. Whenever the thought of lying came to his mind, the warm memories of those 3 pieces of chocolate made him reconsider. This small incident not only repaired a family heirloom, but also deepened the trust and understanding between mother and son.